Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I'm just sitting here drinking my morning coffee. A lot of you accuse me of drinking fake coffees. You guys can see that's real coffee in that cup. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. For those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. There's going to be fewer and fewer of these moving forward. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. But I actually stumbled across a video on my own. This wasn't sent to me by anybody, which is rare. And it was by Jeff Cavalier, aka Athlean-X, with Jesse in there. And they were talking about a bicep exercise that he was doing. And he talked about one of his master cues. And I think that's interesting because this is one that is very, very old school in the lifting world. And he was talking about, he has him doing a dumbbell curl, but it's the focus of it, because you're using a dumbbell in the middle, that you have the palms back as you're doing the curl. And the reason is that takes a lot of the focus off the forearm. And that's actually a very, very old school cue. And I think all of us at some point or another have discussed that with curls, that with most curls, just letting your wrist trail behind a little bit removes the forearm, but not in a way that people are thinking of, because it's one of those things people say, oh, so it helps you isolate the bicep. Well, no, you don't want to ever isolate a muscle. Okay, and that actually is not the point at all, because people will say that and they'll say silly stuff like, I'm trying to isolate a muscle. First of all, you can't isolate a muscle. And even if you could, it's probably not always desirable, right? It's not always desirable from a muscular development perspective. There are times when we might need more emphasis in a certain direction, but it's not because it makes that muscle grow more. It's because we have limited recovery resources, right? And if we have limited recovery resources, there are times when a lagging muscle group simply needs more work with a little less contribution from other muscles that are already going to have large amounts of fatigue from other things that we're doing. You know, case in point, even doing a curl falls under that category, right? Curls have nothing magical about them that a chin-up doesn't already do, and doesn't do potentially better. It's just a standard curl. I'm not talking about when we start dealing with other modalities with maybe speed bands or whatever else. Right? When we're dealing with other things, that's different. But from a basic performance and muscle fiber recruitment perspective, a barbell curl literally does nothing that a chin-up doesn't do. It is not capable of recruiting a single muscle fiber that a good chin-up isn't capable of recruiting anywhere in that bicep. It is mechanically not capable of doing so. Why might it be advisable to do them? Well, because sometimes our lats are fatigued. Sometimes our lats have fatigued to the point to where they have a recovery issue. Maybe they've reached their maximum recoverable volume for you, and your biceps are still lagging, right? And you need extra work. In which case, it does make sense in that case to utilize a curl. But it's not because the curl magically makes the biceps grow more. It can't. It cannot actually beat the chin up on a rep per rep basis for that. It can't do it. Not even possible. Yet it still has value. So let's come over to the point. Why are we doing the palms back like he's talking about? Why does he have that as a master cue? And why does it matter with the forearm? Mainly because what ends up happening is that if you turn it into a wrist curl, and that's what ends up happening, is that when guys allow the wrist to roll forward, it turns it into a wrist curl. And what can end up happening if you're not careful, in some cases, worst case, it can develop some tendonitis down here as a result from the overuse of it. Number two, a lot of times you start getting painful forearm cramps. Because generally what's happened, most of us who train really hard, most of us who train with a lot of stuff, and anyone who wants to joke, so Jason, you don't train, guys, watch my vlog. I put up 6 to 7 training vlogs every single week. I promise you, you do not train harder than me. Okay? And if you're the exception to that rule, you're an extremely rare exception. So, over to the point. For those of us who train extremely hard, our forearms and things get a lot of work. They get a lot of work. And by that same token, let's take someone who maybe even he has someone like Jesse. He probably has him doing a lot of weighted carries. Has him doing deadlifts and stuff. There's a lot of forearm fatigue involved. And he's got him doing chin-ups. So if you have someone who you already have him doing deadlifts, they're doing loaded carries where they grip the bar or grip farmer's walk handles or dumbbells or whatever. You're doing loaded carries, because most people who are training pretty hard are going to do deadlifts and loaded carries. But if you're doing a lot of chin-ups, I do a lot of chin-ups. I do 400 to 500 chin-ups every single week right now. That's standard for me. That's what I do. So if you're doing these things, your forearms are already generally in a fatigued state. And when you start doing various curls, what happens? If you start allowing this to happen, you find that your forearms give out. Your forearms may cramp and give out before your bicep reaches fatigue. And if that happens, what's going on in terms of growth stimulus? And it's not because the forearm couldn't handle it. If you just came in and did nothing but curls, it probably wouldn't matter. Because the forearm, it would keep pace. But when you're already fatigued from all this other stuff and your forearms are having to do so much grip work and other things, that fatigue can accumulate to the point to where your forearm actually cramps or gives out 2 or 3 reps before the bicep does. In which case, what happens? The bicep gets less training stimulus. Well, the bicep's getting less training stimulus. It's not going to grow maximally. It should be common sense, should be common knowledge at that point. So really, it doesn't come down to the concept of, we're just trying to isolate the bicep. That's not the point. The point is that in a balanced program of fatigue management, and if you can just go ahead and take the forearm out of something like a small thing like a curl, your forearms are just not going. They're not going to limit you and give out on you in the middle of the set because they're probably overworked already. Forearms get a lot of work in any sort of real strength program. They really do, a tremendous amount. And when you get to something like a curl, just that contraction against it, it can really cause it to start cramping up due to borderline overuse. So it's just a good idea to do that. And it works. It absolutely does work. It pulls a lot of that out. You can't do the wrist curl in it. You don't get that little cramp right down here. And it will help with that. So it's a good idea. It's actually fairly smart. The other thing he pointed out, though, that I don't think that he covered, he did mention, well, Jesse's starting to get a little bit of a peak, and I like this for my peak, but there's something else going on there. Because that doesn't make the bicep peak. But when he's doing that dumbbell in the middle, what else is happening? The grip width, or at a narrow grip width. People will say, well, does that affect the bicep peak? No, it doesn't make the bicep grow faster. But what does grow faster from that narrower hands in? Like if you're going to have palms up, what happens with the width? Well, when we get real narrow, we get inside shoulder width, the brachialis down here, which is just under the bicep, a little muscle that runs under the bicep, right? That gets better stimulation. And when you flex your arm, what happens? The brachialis tends to roll a little bit under the bicep there. That can make the peak look slightly bigger, can push the peak up just a bit, right? So it's not the bicep itself, it's that little smaller muscle could be getting some extra stimulation. It's going to help. Now, also any sort of hammer curl or pronated curl or whatever actually does that too, but if you're going to do a supine grip, that narrower grip will actually work the brachialis a little more. It doesn't work the bicep itself anymore. Brachialis will get hit a little bit harder. And if that's the case, that may over time contribute to a larger bicep peak if you care about those things. I don't, because I don't care about the bodybuilding gig. But if you truly care about that, if that's like really important to you, then yeah, making sure that you do a few extra things, make sure the brachialis grows, probably not a bad idea. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.